Hi guys, webinar 31. We're getting up there. This is a lot of webinars. So this one, a pretty basic one, and a lot of the stuff you guys already know, but more so what we're going to look into in the last two tables, especially of a 180 man, is just in the goals we're trying to achieve, but like the conceptual ideas, the concepts, instead of like, oh, I want to win the game or something like that. Let's look at actual conceptual ideas that can contribute to how we approach these situations. As you guys know firsthand, cashing is essentially meaningless. It's good that you win back your buy-in, but it's not really going to do anything for your overall profit unless you cash in like every single game you ever play, which would be cool. But pretty much getting like 18th through 10th is like meaningless. It's better than 19th, but for the most part, it sucks. But what's really interesting is when you play these, like, you don't really get that great of money until third, second, first. Actually, yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask. What are the buy-ins for, like, each place? Like, if ninth is only 3 buy-ins, then, like, great. Why didn't you just go play a 9-man and, like, just win a 9-man? You could do that a lot faster than you could get ninth in a 180-man. How many is first place? Like 20 buy-ins? Can you guys remind me what those are? I think that actually means something here. Okay. 50 bucks. 50 bucks. Wow, 20. I said 20. Wow, it's really been a long time. By the way, happy 13-month anniversary. 1 year, 1 month for all of you USA players. Thank you very much. 13 months is today. What I find interesting, 50 buy-ins for first. That's huge. I mean, so we want to do what we can to win, and not so much in the sense where we take that strategy that everybody says, like, play for the win, you know, and then other people say, play to cash, and then other people say, oh, it's play to maximize EV in every situation. But really, it's just play smart. And if you play smart, you'll get what you deserve. But not so much in, like, the long run sense, you know, like we always talk about, like, yeah, exactly. You're right. We're like, we combine all those things. Like, we're not just going to say, like, oh, if we play smart, make good plays, everything will work out in the long run. What we want to do is we want to live in this moment and just say, okay, I am in the money in this particular 180 man. What I do when I play is I treat, and I've kind of touched on this before, but I treat each deep run, and for the sake of this webinar, it's just each in the money, as an independent short run event. For me, I'm treating this as a one-time opportunity, even though we know it's not, because obviously you can get here a lot. It's very normal. But when I played, I was treating this as like, this is just a one-time thing. I am here. But by doing that, that would help me live in the moment. It's this idea of short-run poker where everybody says, oh, you should play long-run poker. And yeah, poker is a long-run thing, but I would treat it as it was a short-run, one-time event. Always asking myself, what's the best thing now? What's the best thing in this game, just this one time, just this short-run event? And that is something that would contribute to a lot of first-place finishes, because I would just focus on this. I'm not just taking the cliche idea of play for the win or something, but I'm just trying to be smart in this isolated one-time event. Earlier in the games, when you have 80 people, 100 people left and stuff like that, you can just do kind of standard long-run plays because you reach those situations a lot. How many hands have you ever played at Big Blind 250? Probably more than you could ever count. You probably even go in the Hold'em Manager and it would tell you the exact number. It'd be like 400,000 or something crazy like that. But when you get really deep, if you can just treat it as a one-time event, you might find yourself living in the moment more and breaking the rules more and being creative more than if you were just to think about the situation as a long run, do the standard play, whatever happens, happens kind of poker game. So with that said, here's 18-handed. We just started. And we'll just go through it. So Morton throws in, says, other people, oh, just kidding. Do you have problems with sound? Should we call again? Do you want to call again, Puyan? Maybe it'll fix it. Is this test? This is a test. Is this laggy? Fuzzy? Okay, recall. Better? Anything? Is it fuzzy? Is it cutting out? TeamViewer didn't cut out.
Oops.
Wrong box. Awesome. Puyan, tell me when we're ready. We'll plow through your game and see all the horrible mistakes you're going to make. By the way, before we begin, it is official. Morton is the most unlucky poker player in the history of poker. I've coached a lot of people, and I gotta tell you, that dude runs bad. Oh, thank you, sir. Love you too. Okay. First hand, right off the bat, we have a decision here. Can you shove? Can you fold? You can do both things. One benefit is, and here are 4 of the most important things that I'm paying attention to, and probably add more to this as we go through. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good, good. So here are some things that I'm thinking about, these conceptual ideas. Attack, preserve, decrease risk, build stack. And we'll probably add more to this. So in every kind of hand, we'll just glimpse over at these, and we'll see if these apply at all. One thing that I don't like about this hand is that I don't have to do anything. If I fold, I'm on the button and I have 7 free hands. Well, 7 hands at a price of 150 ante or more if the blinds go up. Whereas after 7 hands and the blinds hit me. But if I was closer to the blinds hitting me, then there would be more future risk. We are below 10 big blinds if we lose. That's true. I guess one thing we can add is stage of game to this, because this is 18-handed. One thing that I do like about this hand, though, is in terms of decreasing risk, it's good because there's only one player behind us who happens to only have 5.5 normal big blinds. Whereas, for example, if this shover, we'll just keep it simple. Let's pretend we were the button. Well, automatically we have twice as much risk now, assuming all the stacks are similar. And TeamViewer cut out. Yay. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So at least if we're on the button, we have more risk than if we're in the small blind. So being in the small blind makes it better. Senator points out, then again, you are screwed if he shoves. Yeah, like if we call here, we have to call. So you could just even ISO shove just because you know you have to call anyway. So, but at least this is better than if we were in other positions. One thing that pot odds doesn't recognize, and this applies to, I have no idea who the shover is, by the way. One thing that this applies to for all isolation hands is wherever this guy shoves from, let's say if he shoves under the gun, here, 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 right? In any of those spots, okay? And let's pretend that if you were in any spot that's not the blinds, you are getting the exact same pot odds in each spot. So if let's pretend the shover was the under the gun shover and he has whatever fixed range. It doesn't matter if you're here, 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 or here. You will have the exact same pot odds. Pot odds does not recognize risk. Pot odds just recognizes pot odds. That's it. Just needed equity to call. But it doesn't understand the risk of the opponents behind you. That's what's very, very silly about pot odds. Yeah, like, oh man, I wish it didn't cut out. What I'm saying is if the shover is under the gun, then it wouldn't matter if you were sitting in this seat, this seat, this seat, anywhere that's not in the blinds. All of these players would have the exact same pot odds. That could be a good webinar idea, actually. You will have the exact same pot odds in any spot. Then if you're in the small blind, you'll have the exact same pot odds if this guy shoved in any spot. And then if you were in the big blind, you would have your pot odds, and it would be the exact same thing no matter what spot the guy shoved from. Unless the difference is unless the small blind shoves versus the big blind, in case there's 800 less chips in the pot because it's part of the shove. But pot odds doesn't recognize risk, and so that's why one of my biggest things is to decrease risk, which would make this actually an okay ISO shove because you only have one opponent to go through. The reason I spent so much time on this hand is because this will apply to all types of ISO shoves. When I ISO shove / call, or whatever you want to call it, I am focusing on minimizing the number of players behind me. This will minimize your overall risk. And then by minimizing overall risk, we hit this big idea right here to decrease risk. Any questions about that at all before we move on to the next hand? Let's see what Puyan did. Do you have to shove? No. But at least it's lower risk than if you were in a different position. Good question. This is up to you now, right? Totally up to you. It's definitely profitable. I assume versus a range that's only a 3 big blind shove, you're probably ahead of a lot of hands that guy's going to have, a lot of jack 10s, a lot of 10-9 suiteds. It's just up to you now. If there is a reg behind you, there could be a difference because, of course, his range might be different than a random. I think if there is a reg behind you, flatting is a much better play than shoving because some regs make a default assumption that flatting is stronger than shoving. But this hand is totally up to you. I don't like it because I don't have to do it, and then I have 7 free hands or kind of free hands. But at the same time, it is as low risk as possible besides being in the big blind yourself. Yes, you are. Yeah, let's say you're 50%, but then odds say you only need to be 33. So that is a big gap. I hate pot odds, but that does imply a large profitability on this hand because that's a very large gap if you're 50-50, but you only have to be 33. So he wins. Now we will flip through so we can move on because we have about 60 hands. Versus one opponent. Very good because that's what sucks because you still run the risk of someone else. Yeah, we'll actually discuss that actually. Oh, the very first hand is a really good hand here. Thanks, Puyan. Way to go. Why do you think it's invalid? Ah, good. Yes. So then if you have this other guy behind you, then that 33% is not completely accurate. Because, right, pot odds will only see one person, right? So then if you were all of a sudden versus two people, your ace-3 could be like 20, 25%. Maybe even worse sometimes, depending on what hands they turn over. Especially because if there's a guy who's third into the pot, they generally have a pretty damn good hand. So that's a really good point. Another reason why pot odds are flawed, because pot odds, it's like a picture. It just sees this and it goes, here's this picture where you're 33% versus that guy, but it doesn't recognize anything. It doesn't recognize stage of game, what the buy-in is, what the money means to you, all those things we've always talked about in coaching sessions and webinars. So we can't trust pot odds. It's up for us to interpret. You could do either thing on this play. There are some rakes here who even isolate with King 2. I've seen it. Even someone as good as Little Big Kahuna isolates King 2 here. Maybe not in this exact spot, but I've seen him do it in similar types of situations. And who's to say he's not good? Because that guy is amazing, right? So it's totally up to you what you want to do here. It's just you want to make sure that you develop your own personality here. If Little Big Kahuna's personality says he loves to ISO shove in spots like this, good for him. If your personality says you don't enjoy it as much, then don't do it. But both plays are fine. There's no right answer here. Cool beans. The best answer is to always hit 3 of a kind and to not let a straight hit. Always. Okay. So it looks like he's just going to make some folds. So in all these situations, you can always make up what you're doing. There's no exact rules here. So like if he wanted to open ace-3 here, if folded to him, he can't even shove that too. Because of the average effective stack size between all these guys is probably like, I don't know, just guessing like 8,000, 7,500, somewhere in there. Actually, oh, well, the more I look at this, this does seem like a pretty easy shove. Yeah, wow, I think I missed this too because I noticed I just grazed over this. I didn't even look at the stacks behind. So I made the same mistake. Oh, you Germans. Thanks for coming, by the way. Glad you're here. Yeah, raise call big blind at least. Yeah, I mean, but here's what's interesting, guys. Like, yes, should he do something? Definitely. I missed it too. But does missing this actually ruin anything? No. Like, he isn't losing money by folding. He's just missing out on a bonus. Push would be fine if you wanted to push. But notice, attack and build stack would both apply here. So it just seems like a missed attacking spot. That was not good English. Missed attacking spot. Morton's dead on there. You could even do something here if you want, but you don't have to. Whenever I raise in these spots, I always like to know something about the big blind. Like, the more likely he is to be just your typical cliche reg who won't flat call, the more I like to raise there. So here's some pretty easy folds. See, notice this. So if we go back here, this could be inaccurate because stack sizes will change a little bit, but notice how, like, for these two players right here, their pot odds are pretty much exactly the same. They should differ a little bit because of them, one having more chips than the shover, one having less. But let's pretend that both of these guys had 16,000. It would be identical pot odds, but different levels of risk because one person has worse position than the other. Which last hand? Which hand? Ace-3? Or this? Ah, I see. Okay. Easy fold. Notice, so everybody has this shover covered. Netty's pot odds to the, look, 1.3, 43.9 to the decimal. Same with that guy too. Exact same pot odds, but different levels of risk. Puyan has slightly different because he's got the 1,000, and then this guy will have slightly different. Um, easy fold. Do you ever do anything here? Some people shove ace high here. Yeah, it's hard to tell. But also, other risk is that they have a 90 chip difference basically, or 2090, I guess. But even if this is really right here, you can be really wrong or really right. Yeah, and even if you're really right, you still have to hold. But decreasing risk. So not only, like, I mean, I fold this all the time, but even if I had something questionable like ace-6 or something like that, I'm not only analyzing the number of players behind me, but also their stack sizes too. And to be like, okay, am I risking my entire stack? Yes, versus this guy right here. But let's just pretend the big blind had 13K as well as that other guy. Well, this ISO shove with ace-6, even though I still probably don't do it, it gets a little better because you're not risking your whole stack now. You're risking 13 of your 22. Ace-8 would be fine. But basically what I'm doing here is I'm always analyze, that's a hard word to spell. Did I get that right? Analyzing. I can never spell that word. I want to say analyzing. Here you go. Analyzing. Risk versus reward here. And I'm trying to see, most importantly, okay, inappropriate. Most importantly, the risk. So like how we say decrease risk. So whenever I'm playing, even though there's a bunch of spots that are plus EV, people say, oh, take every plus EV spot you can. I'm always analyzing the risk and being like, whoa, wait a minute, this is bad news. Like, I can't remember if I said it in a webinar, but I've definitely used it as an example in some coachings. Like if you were, I've probably said this before actually, you're on the street, a man comes up to you, hold this, and he runs away, and you look down and in your hand is a leather briefcase. You open it up and there's tons and tons of money. What do you do? Yeah, it's like, oh, it's plus EV, I have money. What's the risk? You get shot because that's someone's drug money. You know, did someone just rob a bank and give you the money? Are you going to get arrested and like convicted of a crime you didn't commit? Like, what are the risks? And so that's what I'm always looking at is I'm trying to see plus EV situations and say, well, what's the risk? And if we can do that, then you can apply a humanistic approach to poker instead of like following rules and following programs like Signal would say. You can look at something from the human being point of view, just yourself, and you could say, is this good? Is this bad? And Sebastian's right. It depends exactly on the situation, and that's where it's up to you to be the detective and be like, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Figure it out. So he would fill up his pockets so you don't get noticed. What if the money had a tracker device on it? There's some banks that do that. They have like a big pile of bills and they wrap them up, and then inside the bills they put a little tracking chip. What if they follow you? Oh boy. Yeah, who gave it to you? Oh yeah, so you said, thank you. I was distracted by Puyan's gross comment underneath. Is it way better to do it with Queen 9 and King 9 suited? Probably, because you're going to see a lot of ace-x hands here. Now, if someone's really wide, let's pretend I was the shover right here. I'd be on a pretty wide range. So having like an ace-high versus me would be great. But then it's a question of how many people behind you and what are their stack sizes like, and do you know anything about them, if that applies at all? Well, good question. Here's a really good question, guys. What about folding equity after we lose? Well, when you lose, would you be down to 12,000 or something, right? So the thing is your folding equity in terms of your ability to get people to fold will still stay pretty strong. Um, but your folding equity, as a reminder, folding equity equals the amount of money you are expected to earn on average from making your opponents fold. So in terms of like the chance, I should say the ability to make people fold in future hands, with 12K you can still do a pretty good job of that. But if people call you a little bit looser because you're shorter, maybe, oh, I have better pot odds, they might think, then it would decrease the amount of chips you're expected to earn on average from making them fold. So Sanders says that's why we probably don't take these spots unless we have a huge stack to kill the smaller ones with. Right. This is true. Like, I rather call here or ISO when I'm really short and I need chips, or when I'm so freaking big that the chips I lose don't mean very much to me. The worst times to call are when you have these like 10, 12, 15 big blind stacks, and you're calling off half of your stack because you need those chips to do stuff in future hands. I would love to call off a 7 big blind thing here, like if I had, I don't know, 50, 60K, and I could call off 10K of that maybe, and then just be careful of these guys. One thing that sucks, though, is you do have to call that guy now if you flat call 9K here. If I had 100K chips here, I would love to call it ace-2, because the 10% of my stack I lose, if I lose, not a big deal. But right here, if you lose almost half of your stack, it could be very, very damaging. I have a question just to test people's understanding of folding equity. If you know the answer, and like if it's so easy that you know it, don't say it. What is your, if you do have something like ace-8 here, which is more normal than queen-9 to shove, what's your folding equity here? Okay, so if you know the answer, like you know it for sure, don't say it. If you think you know it but you're not 100% sure, then try and guess what it is. If you isolate here with something like ace-8 or whatever hand you have, what is your folding equity? Uh-oh. Can you hear? Morton, can you hear? Can you hear me? Test. Okay. Yes. So if we isolate a hand that's normal to isolate with, like ace-8 or ace-10, whatever it is, what is your folding equity when you isolate? Okay, so Puyan says blinds. Oh, it's a good answer. Anybody else have a guess? And remember, if you know it for sure, don't say it, because this is really, really important. Huge because we ISO early position. Oh, I see. Oh, you mean the people in the blinds will fold a lot because they see you isolating a person in early position? Well, take a guess. If you don't know, take a guess. Like you said, the blinds. I think that's a great guess. -1 ante. What do you mean by that? Wait, what do you mean by -1 ante? Someone says 0. Anybody else? Oh, I see. If you fold, you lose the ante. So we're assuming that you isolate. Okay, check this out. Here's the first person to get it right here. He's got it dead on. 0. Your folding equity is 0. And this is really, really important. I don't know what that means. What does that mean? Like a boss? Yes, because you always go to showdown. Oh, I see. Okay.
Thank you. It's so sick.
Okay. Yeah, right, because we talked about this in our session the other day. We were talking about in our session, this is what I want to share with the rest of you. And this is really, really important. A lot of you probably know this in some shape or form. But, Puyan, no, we don't have folding equity versus the blinds. You can make the blinds fold, but you don't actually earn equity from making them fold. That's why the term folding equity is misconstrued a lot. Equity it's the actual amount that you're expected to earn. You earn 0 from making them fold. Yes, making them fold is good for you, and they will fold a certain percentage of the time, but when they do fold, the original shover still has access to those chips. So you literally can't win any money from making them fold, because that guy has access to them when you go to showdown. Yes, exactly. Very good, Casper. If the original shover has less than 2K, then there is folding equity. You're right, Puyan, they don't. Folding equity is misapplied a lot. People say, I have folding equity, and what they really mean is, I can make people fold. Like, I have the ability to make people lay down hands, is what usually people mean when they say that. But it's not even what that means at all. Yes. And this is true too. So what's really important is that in any hand, your expected value is your folding equity plus your showdown equity. Because those are the only two ways you can really make money in an actual poker hand. Well, when we just talk about a hand, not about like a real payout or something like that. Folding equity, showdown equity. Notice this, though. This is what's really important. If there is no folding equity, your EV equals your showdown equity. And that's really important to understand. Yes, this is true. This is very true. Now, if it's folded to us in this hand, okay, so let's pretend. It folds to us on the button, okay? Let's just pretend the people in the blinds fold half the time. Let's pretend. Sure, let's use Morton's example. Blinds only call 10% total. Let's just say total, they call 10% of the time combined. What is your folding equity in this hand? Good guess, but no. Bingo. That right there. If they call 10% total, it means they must fold 90% total. So when they fold 90% of the time, you deserve, on average, 90% of the pot. So it's whatever 4,400 minus 440 is, whatever that comes to. Yeah, bingo. So there's your folding equity if they call 10% total, right? Now, in this actual hand, you have 0. If it folds to you, you could have anywhere from 0 to 4,400. And that is what makes hands profitable to shove. That's why shoving and raising and attacking, building stack is so important. And if you do it through a way where you're the shover or you're the raiser, you decrease risk, because with no folding equity, expected value is your showdown equity, right? But the moment you add a value in here like 3960, what that means is you could lose up to 3,960 chips at showdown, and you could still profit in the hand. That's why folding equity is so important. So when you're isolating, that's why we really want to make sure we're decreasing risk. Like we said earlier, we're focusing on minimizing the number of players behind, and then that will minimize your overall risk. Okay, good point. You're right. I don't think they play 10% of the time either. Let's be more realistic. What do you think their ranges are? $15 each. Yeah, and it's close. Like, you could say, so the real way you do it to get the exact range is you find the percentage they fold. So if they call 15%, it means they fold 85%. And then you would do 0.85 times 0.85, and that's the combined chance that one of them calls. It's always a little bit under what they add up to. So it'll probably be 28 or 29, because it's always like a little bit less than 30. So this comes out to 72, which means they fold 72, which means they call 28. Excuse me. Sorry. Yeah, and it's kind of crazy, and it can go on forever. Because there's tons of ways to look at this. What I like about this math is putting into perspective how much you get called, like how frequently, and estimating your folding equity. So just to keep it simple, let's say that they call a total of 30%, the 15 plus 15, keep it easy. So they fold 70%. What's your folding equity? There you go. And that's 70% of the pot. Yeah, math sucks. But now, zero folding equity. Okay, let's move on. So this is fine, of course. Ugh, that sucks. Never mind. That's good. Look at this. This is good. Now what? How would you rate your happiness here on a scale of 1 to 10? Of course, 10 being very, very happy. Oh, you haven't done anything yet. There's no flop. All you did was raise pre-flop. See, one thing I wonder about folding equity is if Puyan put in 4K already, is that considered part of the folding equity on the flop? Like if he had 100% folding equity on the flop, does he have 10K of folding equity or 14K of folding equity? I never know. I never really thought about that, actually. You would think 14, because it's like the fold, this is the reward, this is what's in the pot. Because like he's already risked 4K, but now we're placing 4K in the reward. But 4K, it's part of the risk. The pot is comprised of 10K reward and 4K of his risk is in there. So you're saying once you put it in, the money is dead, so it qualifies as reward. Okay, that makes sense. So let's see what he does here. Okay, he's second to... Oh, okay, well that makes it easy for us. Yeah, it was min-raise pre-flop. So pretty easy fold now. No tough decision. If it checks to us, we could do a few things. We could do a lot of things, actually. You could check. You could also bet small and just try and take a cheap stab. Maybe if you bet another 4K, 5K. You could even shove, but because the pot is more than their stacks. However, that would increase risk, not decrease risk, and you wouldn't necessarily be preserving your stack. You would, however, be attacking. You don't have to call if you bet 4 or 5K. Pot odds wise might suggest you have to call if you just have 2 overs. Backdoor flush. I love that. You have a backdoor straight draw too. Does that count? What do you mean if it was one? Oh, I see. One player versus one player. You mean if the button did not exist right now, would we call now? Or do you mean, is that what you mean? Like, definitely, probably still fold. You might be able to argue a call in the sense that, like, okay, let's say you raise, the button doesn't exist now. The guy in the big blind calls. We'll say the pot is still has like 4K of overlay somehow. And he just donk shoves like this. You could argue a call. You might have the best hand sometimes, but it's just a very risky situation. There is 0 folding equity. And so I just, to decrease risk, I fold. Any hand where you have 0 folding equity, which is usually a call, or somehow it's a call, and confusion, and then I want to put like, can you copy paste a Skype face into, probably, it'll give me like how you type this. There you go. Equals puke. Skype said it, not me. I'll just take Skype's exact words. Skype said it. It's puke. Yeah, it could be a stop and go, right? Exactly. Like, it could be a call, but you don't have to. People donk shove a lot worse. It's true. Some people plan it out as a stop and go. Some people aren't stop and going. They're call and randomly shove going. I don't know if that's a term. But you could just preserve risk. Or preserve stack, decrease risk, I mean. This is really good. Now what? Two calls. This is a good point. Good point. How is it gross? A lot of regs, well, maybe they're, oh, well, I don't know, some, not a lot, but some regs even just shove. If you're beat, you're beat. It's blind versus blind. I think you can definitely call here. If he has ace king, it's not even final table. This is like 12-handed. And you min raise blind versus blind. Blind versus blind you can call. Because there's some people who'll shove any ace here. It's right near wheelhouse. Some people apparently are shoving king 8. And that's good. It's because I'm Chinese. Sorry. Nice flop. This is fine. Totally fine. You don't necessarily have to make anyone reshove because they're fairly short. The big blind might call off more if you just shove. You could. You don't have to, though. One thing I hate doing is shoving when I know the big blind won't flat call if I min raise, because then I can just decrease risk by min raising. And then are we talking about this, the have to call, don't have to call right here? Your pot odds are 35.2, but pot odds can't analyze risk, so that's where you come in. Analyze this, look at stack sizes, think of your stage of game, think of blind level, think of who is shoving. He's actually a decent player. Think about your stack size. Think about all the things that math can't see. So you have a positive in that you get rid of the player you want to get rid of. You have the negative that you could fuel him and bring him back up to 10 big blinds and make him a big threat. Both things. And then just which one suits you as a player. Personally, I fold here, but there's definitely a reason to call too. Let's see what he did. Oh, boo. The best play is fold if you're going to lose and call if you're going to win. Here we go. Here's our ISO play. Do you do it? You know you're essentially 50-50 probably. He's going to have lots of hands in his range. At least the stack behind you in the big blind, there's only one guy. His stack is fairly short because you would have shoved anyway. Sevens is fine. Puyan folds. Could do something here. Don't you hate ace-6? Sure. Fours is definitely a plus EV ISO. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, but I think it's definitely better than the ace-3 from earlier. Let's go to this jack-4. If you have jack-4, and you're probably versus a very, very wide range, so you're probably like 35, 37% in there. We can find out. Well, actually, you do beat some hands, so maybe you could be closer to 40. This isn't 100% accurate, but just to simplify, just say he's wide. I don't know. This isn't accurate, but let's just say something like that. We can do different ones. We'll start with this, and then we can make it 80%, and we can do 100% too. So here's your jack-4. So here you go, 37. You're kind of profitable. We can make, instead of 60, we could just do this. How do you clear? We can say 80. Now you're 41%. It's getting better. And if he's on any two, you're 46%. That's, wow, that's pretty good actually. So yeah, in all these, it's all plus EV. Sorry, I don't know why it's not scrolling down correctly today. He is a pro. Congratulations. Oh, Control A. So if Nettie is a reg and recognizes you in this situation as a reg and your odds, he shouldn't be on any two. My dog doesn't necessarily agree with this. My question, Sebastian, is this another case of are you assigning him things he's thinking of that he may not be thinking of? That was poor English, but he's really mad right now. He's like, are you thinking of things that you shouldn't be thinking about? Road. Puyan, does Nettie know who you are? Okay. Even if he knows who you are, does he know that about you? Like, don't you have friends and you probably don't know everything about them? Like, have you guys ever, like, forgot a friend's birthday or something like that? And you're like, oh, man, forgot your birthday? Happens a lot to a lot of people. Oh, I guess Facebook helps with that. But, like, I'm sure you have friends and, like, you don't know what their birthdays are. Like, how do you know the birthdays of every single one of your friends? Yeah. Good, let's vote. Settle down. So does that mean if the guy is a reg, you just call, and that's the basis for your decisions? Just like, okay, reg, call. He could and should be ATC. Knowing him personally, I know he'd be freakishly wide. Could be ATC is very possible. This is a good point. Your stat, even if you lose, well, heck, you'd have 60K. And that's a really good stack. Oh, no, you'd have 65. So that's a good thing that EV doesn't understand. Okay, dead money. Oh, so Puyan's saying even though 65 is good for final table, 75 is even better. Okay. Well, just because, like, if he recognizes you as a reg, how do we know that he changes with that? I'm sure there's plenty of regs out there who don't change, that they're just robots and they just this, do this, do this, do this, do this. It's like they're like I don't know how it, like, if it's the same from culture to culture, but like, do you guys have, like, when you meet someone you've never met before and you say, oh, hi, nice to meet you, or like whatever your like social convention says, like, this is what you're supposed to say when you meet someone for the first time, right? And it's like you're you're robotic when you do stuff like that, and there's a lot of regs who play like that. They're just gonna do the same thing, do the same thing. How are you doing? Yeah. Nice to steak meet you. Now I want steak. That sounds really good. Yeah, I mean, shoving ATC here is good. But even if Puyan's a reg, who cares? Put the tough decision on him. You have folding equity, not Puyan. He has the tough decision, not you. I don't care if Puyan's a reg. Shove 100%. Challenge him. See what he does. Oh, we already saw that he folded, duh. And then he folded that one too. This one was good. And now, finally, after a million years, final table. So Nettie's gone. It's great. Throw a block of ice on the floor to break the ice. Which one? What do you mean, just to note? What are you talking about? One thing I'd be interested is, like, what's the average stack size when you win final table games? Like, the average stack size you enter the final table with when you win versus whatever other ranking. It would just be cool if there was any, like, telling evidence. Obviously, the more chips you have, the better. But no, this is a really good point. Oh, good rebuttal. Good rebuttal. Oh. It's such a great point. Because you still have over 20 big blinds. How is having 22 big blinds different from having 25 big blinds? Good fold. Huh? Wait, I thought this was final two tables. Last two tables, that's what you said it was called. Now we have to find something you do here. Well, you never made that clear, son. Same thinking process. Do you do something here? We're not arguing. Oh, burn. So we get one ship. Anybody else? Oh, sorry. I don't know what's happening. Sanders got a really great point. I gotta agree with that. Beautiful. Easy. Yes. Walks are good. The A10 suited hand, I believe everybody folded at the result. Okay, so then we get to here, nothing's happening. Get the walk. Easy, right? Super simple. 3-2-1 theory holds up. 15K would be a great play. That'd be totally fine. You might make some people in the small blind freak out with like ace 5 or ace 8. They get confused, don't know what to do. Never know. Yeah, I hate pushing low aces so much, but in a situation like this, at least you're decreasing risk because they only have 4 big blinds of damage that they can do to you. But yeah, I hate it too. I'd much rather have 10-8 offsuit than ace-2. But it builds your stack. One thing in terms of decreasing risk, this is important here. So obviously, whenever, like we said before, you have your EV, and it's a combination of your folding equity and your showdown equity. If we increase folding equity, it means we will end up decreasing showdown equity because you well, I should say, if we increase the percentage that people fold, you will decrease the percentage you go to showdown. Is there a down arrow on the computer? Can you do that? There's no down arrow? Dang it. 2 arrows means down. Well, wait, what do you mean? Call? What are we talking about? Call most likely? Talking about if you make it 15K? Oh. Never mind. But if you, in this hand, like if you make it 15K like Sandra was saying, it's possible you could increase folding equity, which would decrease, this represents down because there's no down arrow, but this would decrease the percentage chance you go to showdown, which would mean more folds and less showdown, which is good because that would decrease risk, because the more often you go to showdown, the higher you are susceptible to risk. Because like that's why I hate calling so much, because when you call, there's no backup plan. There's no folding equity. You just, oh, I gotta hold. Okay, let's move on. Whoa. Universal Replayer double clicked. I don't know why. Do you agree with this, since we've seen his shove? Do you guys agree with this? We get a love it, a nope. 3x is pretty strong. Agree. Is it as strong when this guy has 4x'd before? In this game, we've seen him 4x. However, we haven't seen what he's had. But he's 3x to 15, he 4x to 20, and now he 3x this. So it's in this particular game versus this particular player, this seems like a normal raise size for him. It doesn't seem like the 3x, how normally it's strong because most of the time people are min raising and all of a sudden they 3x or something like that. Where it's different and out of place, this seems common for him, even though it's just 3 hands we've seen. One thing too is, well, he says it's not deep with 11 big blinds. He may not see that. He may perceive his stack as, oh god, I can't do math right now. How many chips is that? 18? 19? Maybe he sees his stack as that. Maybe he's not looking at Puyan's stack and thinking, I have 11 effective big blinds off 3x. Maybe he's just thinking, I have 19 big blinds off 3x. Or maybe he's thinking, I have a hand that I 3x with. And maybe he's not even thinking of any of that other stuff. If there is ever a hand that's not an obvious hand to reshove, you are looking at the best hand there is. Right there. That is beautiful for reshoving. Like the easy hands to reshove here are like ace 10 plus, king queen. Once you get outside of the obvious hands, that's like that, jack 10 suited, queen 10 suited, king jack suited, king 10 suited, 10 9 suited, 10 8 suited. Those are the nutted reshove hands. I still stand by it to this day. My biggest weakness when I played was not reshoving enough. And with what I've learned from coaching a lot of you guys and a lot of other guys in last year, like this is awesome right here. What about a call? Good question. It would depend on what you do on the flop a lot of the time. If we're playing the hand straight up for the value of our whole cards, we'll probably end up losing money. If we steal pots that don't belong to us, we can probably show a profit. Well, yeah, it does make it hard. But the thing is like, let's say you were playing against an opponent who was very, very aggressive and you knew that. Well, you would say, okay, I'm going to make an easy reshove. But you also would have the opportunity to call. And a really aggressive player, you would expect them to c-bet almost every single flop because, let's face it, c-betting is pretty easy to do if you're an aggressive player. Like, it's really just like you don't even have to think about it. A lot of guys will c-bet robotically. So what if you just called with the intention of just shoving over every single bet they make on the flop, assuming you don't have a hand that's better to call with? Then says you basically have to hit some kind of draw or something with 12 big blinds. Well, unless you're planning on just straight bluffing every flop. Like, because then it's like a float. You're floating pre-flop with a good hand. I'd say over the two, or out of the two decisions to call and bluff flops or to just shove now, I think personally I'd go with the shove because, oh well, I mean it would really go either way. I'm not saying calling is bad at all. Like actually, it kind of sounds fun. I just like the idea of shoving now. There's 25,800 out there. So say you had, I don't know, 75% folding equity, you'd pick up whatever 3/4 of that is, which is like 19K, somewhere in there. What do you mean two? Do you mean deuces, threes, and fours? What would we do? Is that what you mean? Probably I'd rather shove this than deuces, threes, fours, but probably be more likely to shove those because they suck if you call. Or Jack 10 suited doesn't suck if you call. You can hit a lot of draws that you can semi bluff with on the flop. Twos, basically, there's no such thing as a semi bluff with twos unless you flop a flush draw, and that would suck too. Or if it's like an ace 3-4 type of flop, and then yeah, I have a gut shot. I guess the best semi draw for twos would be a 3-4-5 flop, because then you have open ended. Or oh no, open ended with a straight flush draw. That would be the best one. And what he means when he says a Nash suited connector bias, it's like, for example, if so say like you have this normal shoving range or whatever, but then start adding in these as like your reshoving hands. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And this is a good point too. And that's why it's better to just shove those pre. I mean, really, there's no like exact line. Like, oh, do you shove 7-8 suited or 6-7 suited? It's like just whatever feels right to you. But most importantly, never enter this hand with a plan. Trust your gut. It's talking to you for a reason. If your gut says fold 6-7 suited, fold it. If your gut says shove 6-7 suited, shove it. Ooh, he called with ace-4. It's an easy game. Good. Look at this. Why is this good? He's attacking. He's preserving his big stack, especially after winning a big hand and finally getting what he wants. He's decreasing risk. He's still building a stack. Boom. On his ace-4 suited play, it makes a lot of sense. Not to me, but probably to him, because he's 3x'd and 4x'd and 3x'd again. And sometimes when you run across guys who raise bigger, you will tend to see people who call more often because they're putting in more chips. So someone who likes to bet too much, it kind of fits with that personality. If they bet too much, they might call a little looser than they should. So it kind of fits what he's doing, even though in terms of doing it, not a good play. Technically, if he was getting someone to reshove a lot, it is a good play. But personally wouldn't do it. But a lot of times when you see guys 3-4x a lot, even guys who 5x sometimes, they're probably more apt to make a call like that. Yeah, this is good. A lot of times, like, your gut feelings come from your experience, and it's like every time you play, whether you realize it or not, you're building some type of experience, and a lot of times it's subconsciously. Like, you don't realize you're learning when you're learning, and that all builds up, and the output is a gut feeling. And you're like, I don't know why I feel like this. Usually it's because somewhere in your subconscious, you've seen this spot before and you've learned from it. You just don't realize it about yourself. Yeah, it's like, it's dead on. Okay. So he makes this great play. This is good. He can call that guy easily. He flat calls. Yeah, you do say that. Oh, boo. That's cheating. Now what? Very little chance he has something. It would be amazing if you had king 9 and the board was king 9-6. It's amazing how that would change stuff because it would make so many more draws possible. all the Broadway cards would be draws. You could check here. Yeah, or bet small. Like betting 6K here would be awesome. Because you get a lot of guys, they're just like, I can't fold. They have like, I don't know, Queen 10. They're just like, I can't fold, it's so cheap. And then they turn a 10, and then they go busto. Good check. Oh, easy game. Oh, he actually had something. Interesting. Good hand. Okay, seems fine. Good raise. It hits all of these. Okay, let's see what you do here. Good. Okay, changing it up. Easy fold. Good. Sorry. Or I'll back up. So he just folded this one. Let's see. We'll see that king 7. You could flat. Up to you. It depends what you do with it. Anybody can flat call. Everybody will play differently post flop. So it depends on how you are personally when it comes to playing this hand post flop. You could also min raise to 24. You would want an idea about this opponent. I don't know if it was the same guy, but didn't someone flat call here when they had... Remember Puyan had ace-10 and there was a guy who called here? I don't know if that was this guy, though. If it was, that would mean that that guy can flat call with a stack of like 8 big blinds and fold post flop, so he's probably a flatter. But I don't know if it's the same guy. Actually, let's check. Oh my God, it's the same guy. He's been there the entire time. Look, here's the hand. Look. So here's our clue right here. He has 8.5 big blinds or 9 big blinds. He calls, folds a flop. Anybody who's flat calling with that stack and folding means they will call. They are callers. Because we just know, as good players, we know that that's a shitty play. Agree with that, just not versus that guy. Right, we are one tabling. True. But basically, this is just a personality read. Like, if you can notice, like, oh, that's bad, he's just a caller. Because anybody who does that, like, they're too loose and they're calling. So then if you remember that, you don't have to, like, take a note on it or anything. That's why I only try and pay attention to these notes, like, only on the important games. Right? So that maybe that's one thing with these last two tables is, like, begin personality reads. Said that, but especially at final tables. But if you remember that, it doesn't. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of times I missed something like that. Raising here would probably be bad because this guy might go, oh, I am pot odds, and then he might call you a lot. Yeah, that's fine. On 18 tables, 18 tables at once, just flip back and forth. Well, forget about the strategy as itself, like, oh, rejam, I'm not a fan of it. Just figure out what's good now. Because, like, when you make a statement like this, you're saying, I'm not a fan of rejamming heads up. So you're encapsulating all different types of heads ups, which are made up of different people, different stack sizes, different blind levels, perhaps different games with different buy-ins. Just think about now. Just now. Put all the other heads ups out of your mind. Win this heads up. I don't care what you do. Just win it. If you want to call here a deuce 3 offsuit and bluff the flop, go for it. So he says, rather do a small 3-bet or call and outplay them post. I'm saying I will preserve as much as possible. That makes sense. Puyan says, rejamming has been one of my most profitable adjustments I've made this year. Good for you, sir. Alright, so now we'll move on. He min raises ace jack. Easy. This is a good point. One thing, when we talk about stack preservation, is not, this is really important, is not passive. And so that's like small 3-bets that make sense. Because most people, when they hear, oh, preserve or stack preservation, it sounds like you're being weak. Like, oh my God, don't. You have to play that hand. It's ace jack or something like that. But it means not shoving huge amounts always, or knowing that a call is profitable and not doing it because you're deciding not to make the call, not just, oh, this is the call. It's plus EV. I have to do it, or this might be a bad call. I fold on purpose. But it's recognizing good spots and then actively choosing not to do them. Yeah, this is true. This is a very true statement. Just from him, he's a psychopath. This is fine. Like, this is not passive. Because we know what he's doing post-flop. He's going to try and take the pot away. I'm starting to call limps like delayed aggression, basically. Because it looks passive, but it's not. Because you know what you're doing with it. 2 hands left. He has something. You could bet for value now. There are some hands might call. Maybe an 8 will call you. Maybe a king high will call you. You could also check too. Hey, look at that. Very, very good. Last hand. Oh, that's cheating. Oh, Universal Replayer is doing this thing now. It like does 2 things at once. And the dogs are going to bark to end this. Okay. So then this guy makes a 4x raise. You could shove now if you want. But call is fine too. Easy game. Agree. So this is fine. I like the way you played it. Easy call. Wow. Glad you held. See, this is a great point. Exactly, because if you call, he folds 0% of the time because you don't want. This is so smart. Thank you for saying that, actually. This makes me think calling is better. When you shove, possibly there is folding equity. When I see someone 4x, I'm assuming they're not going to fold, which means 0 folding equity. But that's not always the case. Some people might fold here for some weird reason. So by calling, we make fold equity 0, which is what we want. We want 0 folding equity pre-flop. The only way to ensure that is to flat call, because then it's impossible for him to fold. Yes, great point. Great point. It's the only thing we can be sure of is if you flat call, there's 0 folding equity pre-flop. Maybe post-flop, but whatever. Yeah. Nice. So that's it. Puyan won. Congratulations. That's it. You are welcome, sir.